All right, mech commanders, we're going to be jumping into some Cityfight, some city tech in this vlog, building that checklist. Previously, we were working our way through lights, mediums, heavies, and assaults, looking at that common thread based on weight class, what makes for a solid machine. We're looking to assemble our lances. Look, you got to do something with all those blind boxes that you keep on buying, right? As your mech collection grows, building that lance. As we continue to jump into individual mechs, we're going to look at the core tactica. We're going to continue to build that checklist for Cityfight, city tech. We're going to build for, can I call it desert tech, fighting on a desert type board. We're going to look at a heavily woods type board and then an open grassland type board. We're going to look at these different hex maps, these different areas, and how that possibly changes the tactica, or how certain mechs kind of excel in those areas, or other mechs are a little bit harder to play. Again, trying to build this framework for you to discover the machines that you like if you're a new player. And if you've been playing Battletech for a while or you're returning, a way to explore different machines and see where we can go from that perspective. So the first thing for Cityfight, City Tech for me is, as a player, being aware of the rules that we're going to play with. And this is something that I think is good practice, good wargaming practice before the game, to sit down and say, what rules are we playing with? Or if there's some terrain pieces on the table, what's this expectation? A side example would be Warhammer 40,000 in a game a couple of weeks ago. We had this fantastic kind of Imperial gun tower with heavy bolters. There. The question was, how are we going to treat this terrain piece? Can somebody enter that fortress and claim it and now use the 4 heavy bolters? I mean, what about my Tyranids? Could they? And, could the hive mind allow that or not? Can we destroy it? Or is it just kind of impassable, level terrain where it's just a terrain piece? So understanding that tactica, I think, is very, very important as a player, and being ready from that perspective. I say that for City Tech in that it's Battletech. You get to decide what you want to do. Can you destroy the buildings? Do they have structure points? Are you playing with basements? Are you playing with rubble and smoke to kind of change the terrain? Are you playing with the skidding rules? You run fast on is it even concrete? Whatever it is in the future, in the 80s future revisited. Are you playing with those rules to just kind of understand where are we in? Because that's going to change some of the tactics. I'm going to say we can destroy buildings. I won't say start off with that, but I think it's an important dimension of Cityfight, City Tech, based on objectives, based on what you want to do. We're going to assume that in this vlog. And of course, we can add in more or less as we go. So the first aspect with Cityfight is things are going to be really, really close. Long-range weapons are minimized for the most part. Now, there might be streets and alleys where you can blast down, but with the spacing of buildings and the objectives, mechs are going to be able to move from building to building or quickly make a sprint across. Perhaps if it's even a medium speed machine, it'll be able to cross that street and quickly gain cover. Cover is absolutely everywhere. So right away, what we see, mechs are going to kind of bunch up. They're going to be moving through the city. It's going to be more close-in fighting, street level. City Fight has 2 dimensions, rooftop and street level. On street level, what this means is indirect fire is always useful. It's always a lot of fun. But indirect fire takes on new opportunities, because that is going to be one of the primary ways that you're able to attack, whether it's effective or not. A lot of modifiers, range, spotters. But from that perspective, indirect fire is going to allow you to soak certain things. And one of the tactics that you can utilize is if you have an indirect fire base, and this could be something like mech-supported archers, longbows, it could be LRM carriers. It could just be a couple of lances with some LRM 10s. I mean, I could be running a Valkyrie, a Grasshopper, and maybe an Atlas. I picked those because they all have, you got a 5, a 10, and a 20. That's a little bit of indirect fire. If I've got my mechs, often what we see in Cityfight is we slowly move up. I've got 2 lances, you've got 2 lances. We move up, and we're kind of across the street from each other, hiding behind some buildings. And it's like, well, who's going to run? Who's going to run up first? Who's going to break cover first and engage? So maybe I bring up a few more mechs. Maybe you bring up a few mechs. Maybe I send 2 Jenners to flank around the side. And you're like, okay, I see what you're doing. And you send 2 Jenners to flank around the side. You'll see where there's this buildup of pressure of mechs, and then someone breaks that pressure. Well, while that pressure is happening, if you've got some LRM, indirect fire, that's really, really interesting. That is really interesting, just to pelt those targets and have something to do, have some damage, but also to possibly break that pressure. The other thing we see is, again, things being clustered up, staying together. Artillery. I mean, artillery is kind of interesting with how it goes. It's kind of hit or miss, literally, depending on the map. But where things bunch up, that is really, really powerful. That is really, really useful. Now, let's talk about infantry. If you've been following my vlogs, you know infantry are fantastic. Really, from a narrative point of view, I love the thought of infantry taking down these war machines and kind of taking these knights of the realm and their social status and just obliterating it, and the chance to see that heroic pose on just like a smoking battle mech as my infantry commander holds up a broken neuro helmet. Like, that's worth the price of admission. But if we talk about the price of admission, infantry battle value or nothing. Purchase Karnovs. I give you full license. You need 3 of them, right? Transport them around. You could do that with APCs. You could do that with goblins. That's a vlog for another time. I've pushed that up to the channel. Check out Karnovs, infantry, and goblin fighting vehicles. But framing that, getting some infantry, once they get in buildings, that's massive. They've got cover. They're low battle value. There was a game where there's maybe 5 or 6 stands of infantry spaced every other building that my opponent had. And I'm running my locust swarm to try and attack some carriers in the back and I think a mobile HQ and stuff like that. And I'm like looking and I'm like, I'm fast with these locusts. I can't run down this street. I can't move down this street because I'm going to eat 5, 6, 7, 8 infantry stands of SRM fire and LRM fire. I'm just going to get soaked. So infantry are a real pain in the city. They are really magnified to be able to hide in buildings. You have to get them out with your own infantry. You have to get them out with machine guns. There's a lot of opportunity to use infantry. Just foot infantry or mechanized or jump infantry. Absolutely fantastic. They take on a new dimension. You have them. You have to have a plan to deal with them. What we also see now going up to that second level, jump jets are massive. They're not just lifesavers. They take on an entirely new tactica in that jump over a building, run up to a building, build that pressure, jump over, and now you're attacking. They get you out of a blind spot, get you out of a pinch, right? You're running and gunning. Maybe it's a mission objective. You have to grab something. You have to be in a certain place. You're being chased. The ability based on the size of the city, and it could be a little city cluster or, I mean, usually when we play, we have an entire dining room table filled with city buildings. So you can be running down one area, run and gun, jump jet over to the other side of the building, jump jet to the other side to get away. You also have to balance the fact if you jump jet up on a building, depending on who's in the area, now everybody gets to see you. Everybody sees you, and you're going to eat a lot of shots. But jump jets are huge and massive in Cityfight, Citytech. Field guns, artillery, just a bunch of AC-5s with some infantry deploying out if they can get to the top level of a building. Well, now line of sight is everything. If there's an elevated skyscraper type building or communications towers, a couple of AC-5s up there with range, or even some AC-2s, that's really, really big. Now let's talk about destructible buildings. I regularly play with demolisher tanks. I love big guns. I love autocannon 20s. It's got 2. It's got a turret. It's got heavy armor. We've pushed that tactica up to the channel here under the Battletech playlist. I won't say go out and get 2 demolishers, but you should go out and get 2 demolishers. They're a lot of fun to play. And everybody notices autocannon 20s. but you have to be able to use them correctly because they've got that short range and there's such a threat, people have to deal with them. Well, I utilize them in Cityfight, urban renewal, blowing up buildings as you go. This is where PPCs and autocannons are interesting because sometimes what will happen is I will push forward with my lances and we will destroy stuff as we go, literally to deny cover as we move ahead. If you've got a bunch of mechs hiding behind a building and I blast it with 4 or 5 PPCs and just level it, now you're out in the open and you're going to eat everything. Okay, so maybe you retreat a little bit. The destructible terrain, that interaction is huge. Having a way to clear that and deal with that is very, very interesting. Let's layer over air support. And again, you can play Battletech a lot of different ways. Just straight up mechs, combined arms, air support. Air power is really, really big in a city based on the fact that, without jumping into the aerotech rules too much, the fact that for the most part you are kind of clustered up. You are kind of working in groups. I mean, that's usual. Mechs and lances want to stay together. If you break off one mech, it better be for a good reason. And even then, it's very dangerous because someone can isolate it and destroy it. But with a city where you're packed up more, strafing runs with jets and fighters, bombing runs, dropping bombs, the ability to kind of move over terrain and attack, that's huge. Something even as simple as warriors, attack helicopters, low battle value, just some light autocannons and some SRM packs. The fact that they can move quickly through the city and literally drop elevation right behind you, there's a lot of different ways to interact and catch you in the city. So from that perspective, I'm going to turn it over to you guys, building that Cityfight checklist, those points where it's like, here's Battletech Rules 101, the things we want to keep in mind, but now they modify based on Cityfight, based on City Tech, and we need to be aware. We need to be ready for it.